there we go. So, welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mickey.
On WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio, so jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 427.
720 and 400.
It's on air, online, and on your smart device, so grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. Just call out, shout out to Grace, and still haven't got one. If you miss Solaris, I doubt I'm ever going to get one, but you know, one day I'd love to be fishing. Yeah, with a capital PH. If you miss Solaris' show, tonight she had her Cyber Witch Cafe, and they had Nish on, and they were discussing divine male principle and witchcraft. I listened to almost all of the show, and you know what? If you haven't caught up with Solaris and her awesome shows and this monthly show that she does, you're missing out. I really think that. So subscribe to the archives for only $5 a month US. It's a cost of a cup of coffee. Well, certainly Australian coffee, maybe a double would cost, maybe a triple, I don't know, depends on what kind of coffee you get and how good the coffee is. You know, you can buy second-hand coffee grounds. Just don't cut it. But that's all it costs. And you can get access to Solaris' shows, our shows, and in fact all of the host shows on Revolution Radio, which is really cool. So you little cost of that, then what that means is you don't have to rely on there being a live stream of the station. You can download, basically like podcasts, you can download the shows and listen to them in your own leisure. Yeah, okay, so we acknowledge, that's Meki and I, and that is Shiny Side Out. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. Where I live, it's the Dark and Yung people, and Meki,
it's the Dark people.
And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Meki, another, let's call it tumultuous week of news. And I don't know why you chose that word out of all the other words in the entire world.
It's a nice word. It's a good one.
It did enough for me, so I chose it. And crazy, Meki. So we hit the 5 million.
Yes,
cases.
We have. Yeah, and almost 100,000 in the States now.
That's right.
And almost 350 globally. So I reckon when I wake up tomorrow morning, we'll have hit those numbers.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is pretty horrendous.
The only, in the say that like the top 8, the only one that's exponential is still Brazil.
Brazil is bad.
Yeah, Brazil's numbers are increasing more and more every day.
That guy, dude, you know, someone said this, I can't remember, I think it was The Lancet. The Lancet is a medical publication. They said Brazil has to fight 2 viruses, the coronavirus and the president. His name escapes me, I apologize. He said, this is what he said, I don't know, because I watched the news report. He said, well, I'm mourning the dead. What else do you want me to do? Okay. All hard there, eh? What?
And then he said, seems like a lot of effort.
I know. And then the Brazilians, the Brazilian government said, we thought the Americans would fix it. You know, they're talking like Trump was talking a big game. You know, we thought they'd fix it. So why would we bother fixing anything or trying to do anything? Oh, okay. So, you know, everybody crosses the street when it's red, you should do it too. Because, hey, you know, someone is clearly smarter than you are. It's incredible. Okay, Brazil has 200 million people.
Yeah.
It's not a small country. It's a big country. And yeah, well, you know, we'll just mourn the dead. What is that, Dave? What is that?
Yeah, do you know what it sounds like? Well, I've done nothing and I'm all out of ideas.
Pass the porridge.
That's right. No, pass the gruel. I have nothing. I've got nothing. I don't understand. Is there a virus? Why is everyone dying?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's probably the least amount of effort we've seen from any country at all. I've got the current graph. You know, it's not just a hockey stick. This thing is just curving. It's like a rocket taking off, and the gaps between each one of those daily numbers is increasing. So if I show the daily cases, which will make sense, you can see it's the same thing. They're getting like 20,000 cases a day. And remember, these are tested cases.
That's right.
These are confirmed tested cases. And that's really tough, because you can imagine if there's 20,000 new cases a day, you've got a community spread going like a wildfire. And that's going to be pretty hard to get under control. I know other countries that have done it. So, for instance, Russia's on the decline now. The UK, they didn't ever have 20. The United Kingdom never had 20 cases per day. Neither did Spain.
Nobody.
Even when you're talking about Italy, it got maybe 6,500 cases, and now it's under control again.
Yeah.
Despite how
bad,
yeah,
right?
we did. So now in India, for instance, India's only about the 6,500, and it's still exponential as well. And we're going to see some really heavy fatality rates coming out of India as well. So
Sorry, Dave. There'll be no reporting on any of this, neither Brazil nor in India, because the people that will get sick and die, they will simply not be counted. They won't be captured. These are the indigent, the homeless.
It's ravaging the slums, right?
The slum, the favela dwellers. That's who is dying, right?
Yeah, and in those shanty towns or the slums, you're not separated by a great margin. You're usually just a wall between you and someone else, and it's not very much.
Cardboard. It's a size of a cardboard box.
that's really much it. If it's even that and not just material, a tarpaulin or something. So you're going to see some spreading going out of control. Now, I did see, Meki, earlier on when India looked like it was maybe a little bit more in control back in mid to late March, where they had their streets shut down. But it didn't take much to then go into those communities where people are, inevitably much closer to each other. And when are they going to go, hey kids, let's get in a car and go to the hospital?
But see, this is the thing though, and we've said it then, I'm going to say it again just to refresh everybody's memory. We are living in a very privileged situation. Most of you, if you're listening to this show, you have access to a computer on the internet. You may even have your own home, your own flat, your own provisions. You may even be lucky enough to have a job that allows you to work from home. You might have all these things. These people that are living in the slums in India, in the favelas, and not just Brazil and India, this is a huge problem, but it's a big problem in those countries specifically. There is no working from home. There is no provisions at home. You work every day, and the money that you make that day, that's what's going to feed you. There are no social isolation scenarios. Calcutta, which was just badly hit recently by the typhoon, a horrible typhoon. Close to 100 people are now have died from that. But those cities, they're so densely populated, especially the slum areas, that they're literally on top of each other. There's 25, 30 people to a room, right? And that's one room, and they're next to each other, and they're on top of each other. They're behind and in front of each other. There is no sanitation. That's a place where only a few years ago we had a pneumonic plague outbreak. Okay, we have cholera, diphtheria, typhoid all the time, right? The only reason they're not as devastating as this particular new virus is because here in the West, at least, we have them somewhat under control, right? So we're not facing those horrible hygienic conditions that these people are. Okay, in fact, if you know this, if you go to India or places like that, and you're a person that comes from a Western type country and with a good water supply, clean water, you can't drink the water there. You can't have the ice. You can't eat veggies that have been washed with the water. You wouldn't survive. And so that's how hardy those people are in those countries, and still they get killed by this. Social isolation is not an option for the vast majority of people. But the thing is this, like I said, Dave, they won't be counted because no one is counting them. And not only that, this is my prediction here. I'm going to make a prediction, nail me down on it. It's no cross handy. Where's the cross when you need it? What I'm going to say to you is this. We don't know how many people have been infected with this virus. I say here that we know only the ones that have been tested. Okay, we don't know how many more there are. I would say we should go times 10. There's about 5 million people. I think it's about 5, right? I think there are 50 million people infected globally, at least.
Yeah.
And instead of 340 odd thousand people having that, I think it's probably closer to 1 million or more that have probably passed away from this.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know. I mean, Dave, they already said it in the UK. They only counted hospital deaths, not aged care deaths.
That's right. And people that were classified as having the virus, confirmed, and sent home, then later died.
Bingo. But what about the spike of aneurysm, the spike of stroke, the spike
That's
of
right. Heart attacks.
Any heart attack, but any types of those diseases, massive spikes have been reported, especially out of New York. I watched this documentary, well, not really a documentary, it was more like a report that this reporter did with the ambos in New York, right? And what they saw and they go, we haven't seen anything like this. And is it COVID related? Well, probably. Only in hindsight, in 2 or 3 years' time, provided everything works out, will we be able to look back and analyze the data, and we will see a massive spike, because we know how many people die roughly every day, right? We've got a good idea.
Yeah, that's right.
And we can annualize it by region, by city, because I've
seen these graphs already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. It's started.
I've been at the World Health. I've been watching them. Yeah. So you can see the background noise of basically, day-to-day quantities of deaths, and you can flick through, the cause of death. Heart attack, stroke, car accident, alcohol, whatever it is, and then suddenly there's a massive spike up. Like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that, right?
Yeah.
But Meki, one thing, I'm sorry to take the point away from you, but I'll give you this one. Initially, we were not told. There wasn't any research into it, but now that the virus is, 4 or 5 months now in the Western world, we've seen that the disease, COVID-19, it says it appears to attack the placenta during pregnancy.
Really?
Yeah. So I've got a CNN Health article which describes that. A small study of 16 pregnant women who tested positive for COVID-19 found evidence of injury to the placenta, the organ that acts as the gut, the kidneys, liver and lungs for a fetus during the pregnancy. And they said that they found evidence of insufficient blood flow from the mother to the fetus and blood clots in the placenta.
Well, that makes sense.
Still about the clotting.
Yeah.
So they're trying to. Dr. Emily Miller says not to paint a scary picture, but these findings worry me.
Yeah. Well, if that were true, look, the easiest way to, and in fact, if you have had a heart attack or you're in the risk category, you know what I'm talking about. Take aspirin. Aspirin is a blood thinner.
That's right.
So I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm just saying, talk to your GP or to your obstetrician, to your doctor, whoever. Is aspirin advisable right now, right? Should we take aspirin? Some people prescribe that anyway because of because of who they are and previous conditions and et cetera, et cetera. So aspirin is definitely, and aspirin is just the bark of the willow tree, right? So there's no magic there. Oh, I guess there is because it's so natural. But the point is, this can work, Dave, right? And people don't have to be too scared about it. Of course, you can't overdo it either, because then the alternative is
you'll bleed out.
There you go, right? If you've got internal bleeding or any bleeding for that matter, it's really hard for your blood to clot.
Yeah.
In the first place, you got to strike a balance there, right?
Oh, yeah. And taken in extreme doses, you'll just bleed through yourself without an injury. So it was originally a rat poison.
Most things were.
Yeah, I know, right? Everything kills poor old rats when you give them too much of it. And warfarin is used by stroke victims whose arteries are really, really clogged, and you'll notice those people who may just rub themselves gently on something, and then suddenly they've got a huge blood blister under the skin. So they're extremely. My grandparents were the same. So that will thin the blood out and prevent the clots. But clots is only one of those things that we have to look out for. And now as we've seen, there's studies now confirming the placental damage, and which then goes on to limiting or reducing the amount of blood flow that the fetus will get. So there is a kick-on effect. But yeah, wow, Meki. So I keep thinking about this, and that is the repercussions of having these lockdowns. Now in Australia, we're pretty lucky, where while all of the state leaders are, maybe in a little bit of conflict about who's to open what border and who's to keep theirs closed, and despite the conflicting, we're still hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, that we won't lose too much as far as an economy is concerned. It's going to have a huge hit, but just how much of a hit, how many bankruptcies are there going to be? Because Hertz just filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah, exactly, right. That ship has sailed, I'm afraid. We are. In fact, the shutdowns.
It's just how bad is it? Is it going to be bad? What's the extent of it? Yeah.
Correct. What's the severity? I mean, and then how prolonged will this be? How long can we look forward to being in these conditions and having that many unemployed people? So again, it's really a difficult situation, because the economic damage is being done. It's done, right? And it'll continue to be done. The more businesses close, the less people money spent is out there. I mean, people still spend money, don't get me wrong, but some businesses just can't move with this, right? Some business can't go online. Some business can't go into delivery. And some business just, simply by the very nature of their existence, have to be where they are, right?
I would have hired a car online if it was possible.
Yeah, if it were possible.
I would have helped out.
Yeah. And look, what I do order online. It's like bakeries are delivering. I order food online. I order a whole bunch of stuff online, because some businesses have gone. There's a cafe near me. I order a meal every week, a couple of meals from there. Again, is it helping me? No, by myself, absolutely not. If everybody does it, that business is going to stay in business, right? Do I have to do it? I don't have to do it. No, I've got enough food at home to do it. But I think. Because I am in a position where I can afford to do it, I think it's incumbent upon me to exercise my social contract here and look after my fellow people, especially in the neighborhood.
I don't want to see those companies or those businesses, the small businesses, gone.
Exactly.
Is why I'm doing the same thing. So they don't need much help, but they need some help, and any help is good help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I found out Cold Rock, the ice cream company, now delivers. Yeah, that's fantastic. So you can see some companies working with how they can successfully maintain some level of business or some level of operation. It must be pretty hard when you've got a severely impacted bottom line, or your income, your revenue stream is depleting, and you've got a lot of sunk costs, and all you're doing is just burning money. But there must be something that they can do to keep going. Meki, one of the things that I thought was really funny this week was the government announcing that the cost for their scheme to keep people employed, even though the company's not making any money, but the company themselves who have lost, the criteria is pretty tough. 30% of their revenue just need to say, I want to keep my people on. It's called JobKeeper, and the government will pay the business to pay the employee the money. That way they can keep the people on the books and they don't become unemployed. And when it all sort of, when the sun shines again, right, when we're out of the tunnel, then we can all go back to work. However, we're still going to see losses when they get back to work, because they're not going to be able to maintain the operational numbers that they used to, because there won't be that much money feeding the business. Anyway, but the government thought there was how much? $13 billion. And they worked out it was only $6.5 billion.
Yeah.
That they'd spent.
It's funny.
Yeah. So the same people who were looking after the budget, for the entire nation, just couldn't get the numbers right on it, and I think it's pretty funny. It sort of saddens me a little, because imagine if they'd opened the scope up to and maybe made that criteria a little easier to gain. They could have spent more money, or this will just allow them to double a leg to that.
Well, I think honestly, I think we need both. I think we need to have more money spent here, and we need it for a longer period of time. If this country were well managed, we wouldn't have an issue at all. We wouldn't have any problems. But we've allowed our natural heritage, our economy, to be plundered by overseas interests. I don't want to sound like a shock jock, but the truth is, and this goes for many countries, we have so much in Australia, so much natural wealth, so many resources in the ground. We make food, like we said before, for 75 million people, right? Gas, oil, coal, uranium, gold, iron ore, etc., 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 rare earths even. But do we manage it well? No, we don't even tax these companies properly, right? All these big resourcing, mining giants, they're not even being taxed properly. Banks are allowed to make crazy profits as well. Where's the social responsibility where the banks say, you know what? Everybody gets a mortgage holiday. Everybody gets...
that's what should have happened.
Yeah, or small business loans. No, they're now excused. Thank you very much. Instead of making $20 billion profit, we'll make $10 billion profit.
But we're so poor.
Yeah, and then CEO wages, that came under fire as well, Dave. We're taking a pay cut. Taking a pay cut from 5 million to 3 million, or from 10 million to 8, really? And then the whole billionaire thing. There was I think I mentioned this before.
You did.
I've been saying this for years, right? And they were saying, there's this. I think this was this reporter or comedian. I can't remember. And it was a she. I can't remember her name. Anyway, what she said was, you know what? As soon as you've made $100 million, I think that was the number, you get a certificate saying you have won capitalism. Well done. And then everything else,
right.
Everything else now goes to somewhere. Like it goes to the people, right? Because there is no longer any justification. In fact, I just recently saw another article that said, in the last 3 months, the richest people in the world just got a lot richer. All these billionaires, they just made enormous fortunes off this situation right now. Whereas the poor, and this is the bottom of the pyramid here, they die. 344,000 people have perished, untold millions are infected, tens of millions are out of work, right? Hundreds of millions are affected somehow, yet the top crust, the 0.1% of the top, are making a killing here. They're making money hand over fist. If this doesn't compel us to change the system, or at least start talking about it, it's all over, Dave. I'll hang up my head. I'm gonna close the door behind me and leave the asylum to the inmates. That's what I'm doing.
In the panopticon. So, look, there's someone in the chat room saying that we've drunk basically the equivalent of Kool-Aid, but it's the Force-Aid from Forsey, and about the virus. And look, the virus is real. It is absolutely real. It's killing people. But I think what people confuse is the calculation on how to work out the case fatality rate. Because once the virus is completely done, you do two things. You add the people who recovered and the people who died, you add those together. That number, you then divide the dead by that number and times it by 100, and you get the percentage of those people who have died. That's how you do it, right? So you can't do it using the current infected numbers. You can only do it using those who have come out the other side, because that's what happens at the end of the virus's run, and that's where the numbers come from, and that's how you can compare it to SARS or any of MERS or whatever you want. I don't care what you want to compare it to, because that's how they were done. So if you don't believe it's real, I'm sorry, I can't help you, except for, maybe you should, do some more investigation into it and not just
talk to the medical workers. So
that's what I said. That's what I said. We have friends who work in medical, and the virus is real. It's a real thing.
And not just friends, but family as well.
Yeah.
And in Australia, 6-8 weeks ago, there was a real panic, which wasn't really communicated to the wider public, because we were completely underprepared. I mean, if the virus had hit us like it hit Italy, then Australia would have gone the way of Italy. But now, some 8 weeks later, the hospitals, the medical establishment is prepared for a worse, not the worst, but for a worst case scenario, right? That's why the restrictions are being eased here. But make no mistake, right? People, in Australia we're lucky, 101 people have died. 101 people. right? That's each death, of course, is a tragedy, but it's only 101 people in the States. I mean, okay, well, if you don't think they died of this virus, if you don't think the virus exists, fine, but they died of something. It's almost 100,000 people that passed away. 100,000 people in the space of a couple months on just for this one thing here.
Yeah.
Right, and it's not even the fatality rate that's the worry here. It's the economy that is killing more so, right? And if you look at the overall death rate, it's now sitting at about 13%, leveled out. Looking at outpatient data, it was at 21%.
That's right.
Again, Dave, I don't think these numbers are accurate because we haven't got all the infections, we haven't got all the people that died.
That's so true. Mm-hmm.
So it'll be a long time before we can figure it out. But something is happening. You gotta have rocks in your head if you don't know that something is happening. Clearly, something is happening, right? If you've got a better explanation as to what it is, rather than saying we drank the Forkade, and well, so be it. That's okay. We got our big boy pants on. We can take it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, give me a better explanation of what's going on and what these people died of, right? And then how and how we can make it stop. That's what I want to know.
Yeah. So the US has 20,000 cases a day still. It's on the decline, but if you're looking at the UK, sorry, you're looking at the US's case fatality rate, still pretty high. You don't want to be the person who's on a ventilator for 5 weeks with that virus. If someone was walking your neighborhood and killing random people and had currently hit a total of 97,087 people, you'd be going to your senators, your local congressmen, and saying, for God's sake, stop the fool.
Yeah. Right? Someone stop him, not me, someone.
Oh, it's not real. Right? No, it's not real. If someone was actually doing this, and maybe they were invisible, Mackie. Maybe they imagine an invisible man with a gun, just pshoo, and killing random people here and there. You'd be calling out for help. You'd want this to stop. And the fact that people are like complacent, saying my liberty is more important. I want to go outside. Well, I really appreciate the fundamental, capitalistic system that we live in, where you've got to be spending money for it to work, and we're watching it go down the toilet. Well, it's circling the drain, and I think it's been circling the drain for some time.
Oh, it failed. It failed. It failed in the 2000s. It failed with the collapse of some of the loan institutions, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the Lehman Brothers. I mean, there were a whole bunch of indicators that our system is dead. This economic system is dead. The Harvard Business School Greenspan model of economic development is dead.
That's right.
We need something else, Dave. We need sustainability. We need something that where the person that dies with the most doesn't win. That's the system we need. Okay? That's what we need.
I like that. That's really cool. I think you're right, Mickey. I think you should just get a plaque that you can put on the wall when you hit $1 billion or whatever, 300 million. I don't care. And you won. That's great. That's really cool. Do that. So I talked about Hertz Rent-A-Car filing for bankruptcy. The next one was. As a result of all of this, Mackie, this crazy time that we live in, and all our economies going to dirt, the beef producers in our country have sort of we've got a little bit of a conflict. Our conflict is with China and only over I think it started with this, but I think that what's that song? And see your true colours shine through. Right? Because I think that's what I think we're really seeing is, from a business perspective, we're seeing our international trade going by the wayside. I think people are maybe a little bit too aggressive. Certainly, one of our particular trading partners isn't quite happy with us. Demanding, being part of, I think, 126 countries now, Mickey, are part of this inquiry, just saying, you know what, you've had a number of viruses come from your marketplaces. Let's find the true origin of this thing and let's work it out, right? Let's work it out. I'm going to say it really harmlessly like that. Let's just work it out. And what that's done, unfortunately, China has in its in the CCP are quite headstrong and can't lose face in front of its own people. So it's been saying we've got this thing under control, everything's fine, but the northeast isn't having a great time right now. But depending on where you are, the messaging from the government is it's all good. We need to open back up again. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be just fine. But now, because 126 countries in the world are saying, yeah, actually, no, we should be looking at independent inquiry, because we don't want to basically trust just what you're saying. We know what you've got it all under control. That's great, but let's all have a look. And it just happens, Mickey, that we have some economic or trade situations that have opened up now. Maybe if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say that they're connected together, right? I'd say that it wasn't just happenstance that they cut off our beef and they wanted to tariff barley, and they've asked their own people, their own power production coal people, to say source local coal, don't buy it from Australia anymore.
Yeah, see, this is where cultural differences come in, right? And it's really important to understand this. Mm-hmm. If you are China, or in Asia, it's a thing. It's called face, meaning honor, personal, family honor, country honor, and all these things are very, very important. Mm-hmm. And if someone questions it, and someone says you might be incompetent or you're not doing something well, it reflects poorly on yourself, but also poorly on everybody else associated with you, right? Because of face. And this is really what's happening here. So Australia is completely within its rights. In fact, everybody should do this. I mean, hey, let's not have this happen again. How did it happen? Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. That's just common sense, right? The problem, of course, is it might look China bad. And China acted like a petulant child. There's no real clever strategy here.
No, that's right.
It's just a child throwing out its toys and saying, "Hey, I'm going home. Then I'm going to pee my pants, man." See how sorry you're then. And in fact, what's happening here is these embargoes will hurt China worse than they will hurt Australia, for the very simple reason that we produce the highest quality coal, the highest quality iron ore. Mm-hmm. Well, when we say produces, we dig it up off the ground.
Oh, that's producing it. We produced it out of the ground. And the other one is our meat, our beef is clean.
Yes.
All right.
Now, pork hasn't been affected by this.
No.
So we got barley, we got coal, and we got beef. Now, beef is for the rich Chinese. For the rich, if you will. And they don't care, they can afford it. If you stopped the pork produce...
they'd be held to pay, Mickey.
There'd be riots in the street in China, because, the regular people in China eat pork, right? That's what they eat. And unfortunately for China and for the rest of the world, most countries suffered from the swine flu recently, which killed a whole bunch of, it's...
They basically had to kill hundreds of thousands of pigs.
Yeah. So the only safe pork product left
is
Australia. Yeah. So we won't see tariffs on that anytime soon.
No, but this is the thing. So we were just... I'm going to sound really much like Sky News and the Bolt Report right now, and I sort of hate myself for saying these words out loud. But the minister that is here as an envoy, I suppose, for China and negotiates trade on their behalf, he said that Australia is the chewing gum on the shoe of China. That's the quote that he gave in a press conference. You what? So I think this agitation that we've caused, Meki, is going to be hard. I think it's going to be hard for us to get and to move from. But India has said, hey, you know what, the barley, we'll have it. We want barley. If there's any people in India left to buy it, but after the virus has gone and done its thing. But this question, Meki, has come up, and it's everywhere now. It's in all of the media about this war posturing that is now I suppose, the view that the right-wing media is taking. They're trying to not alert us in so much so, but saying we're all pointing at them and saying, I think they're being a bit defensive about this, and maybe they're posturing for war.
Yeah, we've discussed this at length, and Dave and Hovey and myself, in the Facebook chat. I completely disagree, and the reason I disagree is this. Now, while all the preconditions are set for it, including high unemployment, a really terrible economic situation, politically, we are certainly set for it. If there were a war posturing, it would be very, very different. And the first thing that you would do is you buy up everybody's resources. Yeah, you don't put embargoes and you just get more of the stuff. And if China was all of a sudden, binge buying, iron ore, coal, oil, beef, pork, then I'd be worried. I'd be worried out of my mind. I go, oh my God, they're stocking up, they're stockpiling. Okay, this is not good. They're not. They're like a child. It's funny, right? And in fact, North Korea is very similar in its response. It's a childish response. It's also a response that very much highlights just how little regard they have for Australia as an entity. Right now, again, I can't really argue on the ScoMo front. I feel or Dutton for that matter. But
that's right.
Still, Australia as an entity and a regional power, which is what we are, and especially when it comes to, I guess we're the breadbasket, certainly for the region to some extent. We need to be heard and we need to be taken seriously, right? It's a thing that's happening, but the war. Could it happen? Yes, it could happen. Of course it could happen. Anything can happen. I still contend it's highly unlikely simply because there aren't any clear-cut reasons. Well, no, gains they can always be made, but what you need is an excuse. So World War I and World War II, nobody went out and declared war. So World War I was brewing for decades before it happened, but they needed an excuse. So what happened? The Black Hand killed Franz Ferdinand, the Archduke of Austria, the crown prince, if you will, in a terrorist attack in Sarajevo. That's what happened, and that was the precedent that the Austrians and the Russians and everybody else used to go to war. So the war was always brewing between Germany and Great Britain. A power on its decline, a power on its rise, and never the twain shall meet, and they needed to have it out. And this terrorist act, if you will, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, gave them that excuse. If anybody thinks that was the actual reason for the war, they got, again, rocks on their heads. It was just a convenient excuse, because all of a sudden, Austria goes to Germany, hey, Germany, look, I really want to go into Serbia and, just knock them about because my boy here was killed. And Germany goes, yeah, do what you like. They gave him a blank check. Just go ahead and knock yourself out. So they did. Little did they know, or maybe they did know, that Serbia was allied to Russia, both Slavic nations, and France, of course, was allied with Russia, and France was also allied with Great Britain. And before you knew it, the Ottomans were in it, and the Austrians and the Germans on the one side, and on the other side you had the French, the Russians, the UK, and the Russians pulled out because they had a revolution happening. So it all went haywire in Europe in the teenies and 20s there. It was a horrible time. World War II, similar situation, right? It was brewing. And in fact, you can directly link World War II to the outcome of World War I, the Treaty of Versailles, the bankrupting of Germany, the massive depression that hit the world, by the way. The Great Depression was a global problem. Huge unemployment, right? A lot of veterans still from World War I that weren't very happy. There was a lot of unrest, and people looked to the left and to the right. There were street battles between the police and the right-wing activists and the left-wing activists, right? And in some countries the left won, and other countries the right won. So Franco, Spain, Italy, Germany, the right-wingers won. In Russia, for example, in China to some extent as well, the left-wing won. So it was really an ideological war in World War II. And again, it wasn't that Germany declared war on anyone per se. They said, they annexed the Sudetenland, they annexed Austria, they annexed the right side of the Rhine River, and all these. At every step, Hitler told his people, his generals, pull back. As soon as you get any resistance, pull back. Until it got to such a point where appeasement didn't work anymore. He says, you know what? I want Poland.
Yeah, there you go.
And
Yeah.
in fact, Russia and Germany said, yeah, let's split Poland down the middle, thank you very much, while they were still talking. And then later on, that all went down the hill. But they claimed that the Polish army, for whatever reason, attacked a German
Radio
German
station.
mail station.
Mail station.
It was actually, yeah, but I don't know if there was a radio station. There was definitely a post house, right? And as of 6 o'clock this morning or some such, we are shooting back. Really?
Yeah, right.
And then Blitzkrieg came, and the Polish cavalry, cavalry was sent to fight the German Air Force. That went really well. Anybody who thinks that these things are real and the Polish people, the Polish military attacked the Germans, again, rocks in their heads. We're looking for excuses here. Now, what's our excuse here? Let's say look at Gulf of Tonkin, Pearl Harbor, right?
Yeah.
We're thinking of the Lusitania. When America wanted to get into World War II, even into World War I, even into the Vietnam War, Gulf of Tonkin, right? This was a French war to start with. The French, they got out of there real quick, smart. We can't win this, bye-bye. They left the baguette and the coffee, and they said, au revoir, see you later. The Americans were stuck with the mess, okay? So invasion of Afghanistan, 9/11. Perfect excuse to invade Afghanistan. Nothing to do with anything, but, let's invade anyway. The gas pipeline. And so you always have to have an excuse for the majority of the people to buy in, Dave, right?
Yeah.
The coalition of the willing, the Axis and the Allies, and, the good people and the bad people. Hey, Gerber, how are you, man? So I can't see this excuse being formed quite yet. Who knows what the next few months will bring?
Well,
so that's
how about Hong Kong? And all of the countries are saying you should really leave it alone.
Hong Kong is the sovereign part of it's a part of sovereign China.
That's
Hong
correct.
Kong was handed back in 1999
Yep.
from Great Britain to China, same as Macau and other places. It is not part of China. Whatever China, it's an internal affair. China can nuke Hong Kong if they wanted to,
And we can't do anything about it. That's
Not
right.
really. I mean, would we like it? No, we wouldn't like. No one would like it. If the Chinese went to the South China Sea and start annexing islands, which they have, that both the Philippines and the Japanese
The thing they're already doing, and yeah, that's right, and the
Yeah.
Philippines and Indonesia. Yep.
But no one is using that as anything, right? Everybody's focused on Hong Kong. Hong Kong is an internal matter. I feel sorry for the people in Hong Kong. I really do. But come on. Like you didn't see this coming. You got, again, rocks in your head. I'm sorry. If you don't understand, that would have come,
That's exactly right. So, but we're seeing this. This is the messaging in our media, where they're talking about, taking Hong Kong's side in this argument, and this is our. I know, right? But this is what I'm seeing our media. So what they're doing is, there's a China beat up at the same time as the virus, investigation, the sanctions or trade embargoes or problems trading, and then the advertised, because if we didn't see it in the media, we would never know what happened. So if we didn't hear the Chinese rhetoric back to us, which apparently appears as though it was related to the investigation into the virus, if we didn't see that, and we didn't see all of that previous 8 months of rioting in the streets in Hong Kong, and now know about China wanting to move in and just take control of it and do all the things they need to do to look after it, we wouldn't have an idea. We'd see nothing. But our media is currently using the messaging around this as being the totalitarian regime, where the people, all the atrocities that have taken place. Now they're starting to build this case to the people of their respective countries, and this is it's going on. And the reason why I bring it up, because I know your worldviews, Mickey, are impeccable. Your strategy, everything you see, and all the things you hear, and all the things you know, and the history, it's so embedded in you, right? You have a very balanced view, and you know what's going on, and I like to see, and I can detect all the messaging and how it is. So this balance, right, between you and me and what I bring out and how it's explained, I think it's lovely. I think it's a really cool thing for our listeners to hear. Because if you the true thing is, if you're frightened, turn the TV off, and it'll actually make you feel better. Because we're being driven by the media, right? And now, I've never seen so much right-wing media in channels that used to, I think, be a little bit more balanced. Maybe I couldn't see it then, but now I'm seeing them. Wow, they're like extremists. Where did the terrorism go? I think it's turned to the right-wing media. Mm-hmm. It's creating fear.
Well, yeah, but again, that's not a new game either, right?
No, it's not.
And this whole, I mean, to be honest with you, this whole coverage and the media is here very much to blame. The way it has been covered by the media talk about the situation currently is horrible. It has made people so fearful and so terrified of their own shadow, that it's just astounding that we can still function at all. I reckon there have been spades of suicides related to the media coverage, or in the way it was covered. I reckon it's definitely a problem, and I think the media is absolutely to blame. The way it's been covered, the outbreak and the reaction and the fear mongering. Because again, perspective, guys, everybody out there. Yes, it's bad. It is bad, but it is not the zombie apocalypse, right? We are sitting at home and watching TV and eating, takeaway or delivery food, and
the shops have food. Mm-hmm.
The shops have food. I mean, it was stupidity and unpreparedness that led to the great toilet paper crisis of 2020, right? I mean, honestly, I'll be honest with you, Dave. I said it before. I was blown away. I was going, wow. So, because I've been doing my prepping all wrong, clearly, right? I
should have had a warehouse full of toilet paper.
Yeah, I mean, I have enough toilet paper to last me quite a while because I buy it when it's on sale. But the point, I mean, and then it came to blows. I mean, we only saw a fraction of this on TV. Anecdotally, I heard of many stories where people came to blows. Grown men fighting at Woolies and Coles, these are retail outlets here, grocery stores, over toilet paper. If you had told me last year in 2019 that people would be fighting over toilet paper,
you would think,
sure.
I know, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Water? Yeah, I get
that's
it.
right.
Guns and ammo?
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. Toilet paper.
I know. No sci-fi writer, and I've said this too as well before, and no sci-fi writer has ever predicted that toilet paper would be the thing. We never thought it was we never thought it was a staple. We never thought you needed to have toilet paper so bad that you're willing to fight someone for it in the shopping centre.
The one time I remember a movie called Red Dawn, the original.
I remember Red Dawn. Yep.
That was back in the I think it was in the 80s, 88 or whatever it was made. A young Charlie Sheen and all those guys. So and there was one kid. They all jump on the back of this pickup truck, which the older brother has, and they all go up into the mountains to resist the Russians as they're invading. And one kid, as they're loading up supplies from a drugstore, says, make sure you get a lot of toilet paper. I don't want to use leaves. I don't want to use leaves later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, okay, that was maybe that was
it. Right? Yeah, subliminally people remembered that.
It's just crazy.
But
fear, man.
Yeah, fear is definitely the thing that's being propagated. And I've not seen the war on terror as a crawl on any station any longer.
So okay, everybody, this is the homework assignment. Look at all the news stories that aren't being covered. Look at all the issues that are no longer being covered or discussed, fallen by the wayside. And I read Nexus magazine. Shout out to Duncan, doing a great job with the team for many years now. I really want to try to get him on the show. I haven't really been able to do that, but Duncan is Duncan Rhodes. He's the publisher here in Australia of Nexus magazine. If you get a chance to read it, go ahead. It's really jam-packed, full of goodness. But he always has a segment of news stories, that are underreported or not reported or whatever. And there was a treasure trove this time around, and I might share some of these with you next time. But have a look out for all the stories that aren't being reported. That's really my challenge to you, because I reckon a lot of law and a lot of amendments and bills will be passed without you even knowing it. They will sell away your natural rights to everything.
Oh, completely. And look, we've seen the creation of laws here, which, granted, needed to be put in place to be able to allow the policing of lockdown, where we hadn't anything in the past. There was nothing. So now that there are laws in place, I wonder when they're going to be deleted. Because, and I know the answer, it's rhetorical, and it's probably never. They'll stay there and be attached to an act, which will be, the Biosecurity Act, and these will be laws that will just be reinstated at that point. I noticed that I made point, Meki, also of when the that biosecurity was enabled this time around, and I can't wait till it's turned off, but it's going to be some time. Our respective countries, of all of the listeners, Meki, is the thing that I'm more concerned about, because I know sporting groups that can't compete. They were lined up for world championships. None of that. That's never going to happen. Even like interstate to state championships. No, there's none of that. It's sport. It's only sport. And they're kids, We've got, while we have really low case numbers here, like increase in case numbers, like 6 a day or something, right? It's not much, and they'll end up getting to the bottom of those, and that'll make that go away. But our lives coming back and being able to travel and doing all those things, I think that's going to be the hardest thing, especially when you've got countries like India and all the ones that are going exponential, all the ones where I've always wanted to travel to, but we just can't. And I reckon it's going to be until they're zero.
Well, yes. In fact, even then it will be hard, simply because people will have fear. There'll be a fear factor, and maybe there will be a virus travel pass, and there will be checks and controls and all kinds of things. So
who's going to own the aviation industry?
Phew! I mean, Thai Airways. I mean, there are a lot of little players that went bankrupt the other day, like 8 or 9 of them.
Yeah.
Thai Airways gone.
So, like airline companies are like jugglers. They'll be holding 1 or 2 balls only at that time that you take a photograph of them, with the rest of them in the air. Mm-hmm. All right, 1 or 2. That's all. So that's on the ground. They've got that out of 10. 1% of them, 10% of them are on the ground, 90% in the air. Well, now they're all grounded, man. They're paying rent for those, and then they've got to service them. They can't sit idle. No. So to actually recover from this is going to be such a long haul that they may not survive at all. Or there might be only one, if they're lucky.
That's
and not none. You can imagine there being none. So that they just have to sell them all for scrap, get them just, ground up into junk, and have to buy new planes by the end of it. Imagine if it was maybe 5 years, Meki.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine 5 years of no international flights, because this thing just keeps bouncing around every time we open up a destination.
Well, already, flights are 10 times what they used to be. So for us here in Australia, it means it's about $20,000 to fly to Europe, $10,000 to fly to Singapore.
Really?
Right. So yeah, at the moment, if you want, those are the
because basically you're hiring the whole plane to go there, right?
Well, I mean, look, the only planes really that they're like passenger type planes are chartered flights, and they come at that price tag.
Yeah.
Because the scale of the operation. I mean, they were always operating on razor thin margins.
That's right.
Airlines, right?
Yeah.
And now
too
that
competitive.
And there's no more scale, and because the scale is gone, a single plane is completely unprofitable if you run it at the cost you had before. It'll take. I mean, look, there won't be a return to what we used to for a long time, and only approach normalcy in maybe 5 to 6 years' time, depending again on how long this thing is going to last, what else is going to hit us. Because look, this is not the last thing. I know this means don't go away, donate if you can. We'll talk about ancient tech later, guys. Only a short break.
You're back on Dave and Meki's Shiny Side Out is where it's at right now. Not sure if Meki's made it back. Not yet. He'll just be back in a second. If you're new to Shiny Side Out, welcome aboard. This is the Tinfoil Hat Zone. And the first hour is usually current affairs, and the second hour is the show topic. Unless we have a guest, then it might be the full 2 hours, or just the second hour like this is. Today's show is Ancient Tech Part 6, and this is show number 427. And the Ancient Tech carried over from last week, that is, and I'm just opening up my show notes. We invite you to also purchase some merchandise from the station's website. It's very important that you do so. You can just simply subscribe to the archives, or you can get yourself some merch. It's pretty cool. Meki and I have our own merch, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see some merch banners. You go to Zazzle, and we've got our own page there. You can support us that way. You can support the station. It doesn't really matter to us. Just support the station so we can keep going. Now, in, I suppose, Meki's absence still, we're talking about stone technology. And we're going to carry on from last week. And this is a special case. I'm going to get the... where is it? I'm looking for it. Megalithic structures, there we go. So I've got a slide deck of megalithic structures, which shows some amazing stonework. Now, lathed turned stone housewares. In the Cairo Museum and in other museums around the world, there are examples of stoneware that were found in and around step pyramids at Saqqara. Petrie, the paleontologist, I suspect, archaeologists also found pieces of similar stoneware at Giza. There are several special things about these bowls, vases or vases, and plates. They show the unmistakable tool marks of a lathe that manufactured the item. This can be seen or easily seen in the center of the open bowls or plates, where the angle of the cut changes rapidly, leaving a clean and narrow and perfectly circular line made by the tip of the cutting tool. These bowls and stone dishes, or the platters, are some of the finest ever found, and they are from the earliest period of ancient Egyptian civilization. They are made from a variety of materials, from soft, such as alabaster, all the way up to the hardest scale, to the very hard, such as granite. Working with soft stone, such as alabaster, is relatively simple compared to granite. Alabaster can be worked with primitive tools and abrasives. The elegant workings in granite are a different matter and indicate not only a consummate level of skill, but a different and perhaps more advanced technology. And here's a quote from Petrie. "The lathe appears to have been as familiar an instrument in the 4th dynasty as it is in the modern workshops." I remember I did metalwork and I did woodwork as well, and we had lathes there, and we learned how to utilize their function to be able to output goods, and it made a lot of sense to us when we did it. But yes, you can see it, unless if it's on first cut, you can actually see the cut, and that's what he's trying to explain here. That stoneware such as this has not been found from any later era in Egyptian history. It seems that the skills necessary were lost. Some delicate vases or vases are made of very brittle stones such as schist. It's like flint. And yet are finished, turned and polished to a flawless paper-thin edge. An extraordinary feat of craftsmanship. At least one piece is so flawlessly turned that the entire bowl, which is about 9 inches in diameter, fully hollowed out, including an undercut of the 3-inch opening in the top, balances perfectly. The top rest horizontally when the bowl is placed on a glass shelf. On a round, tipped bottom no bigger than the size of the shape of the tip of a hen's egg.
That's enormous.
That's crazy, isn't it? This requires that the entire bowl have a symmetrical wall thickness without any substantial error. Like if it was, done on a, what's it called? A CNC lathe today, rather than a manual lathe, right? But CNC, computer controlled. So with a base area so tiny, less than 0.15 of a square inch, any asymmetric shape in a material as dense as granite would produce a lean in the balance of the finished piece. This kind of skill will raise the eyebrows of any machinist today. To produce such a piece in clay would be very impressive. In granite, it's incredible. Other pieces turned out of granite, porphyry or basalt, are completely hollowed with narrow undercut flared openings, and some even have long necks, which means imagine the tool would have to be extraordinary long and accurate. Since we have yet to reproduce such pieces, it is safe to say that the techniques or machinery they employed to produce these bowls has yet to be replicated. There is a large 24-inch or more diameter piece turned out of schist, shown, which would have been shown here, glued back together in the Cairo Museum. If you go to the Cairo Museum, if you've ever been fortunate enough to go there and seen the piece for yourself, yeah, it's quite something. It's a large, it's like a large plate with a central hub, about 2 to 3 inches in diameter, central hub, with an outside rim that in 3 areas spaced evenly around the perimeter is flared towards the central hub. This is truly amazing, an amazing feat of stonework. There were not just a few of these. Apparently there were thousands found in and around the Step Pyramid. The Step Pyramid is believed to be the oldest pyramid in Egypt, Meki.
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
In fact, we're pretty sure it isn't, because it was also the least accomplished of the pyramids. Right? It's usually just a heap of rocks thrown together. Anyway, we keep going.
Just imagine, Meki, you and I, we're in a bunch of, what do you call it? People that just wander the place. Gypsies. So we're like a gypsy band, right? And we're in a place where there's a huge head sticking out of the sand, and there's some pyramids, and we convince people we can build it, and they go, yeah, go ahead, and we go, well, we'll give it a shot, right? And we build the Step Pyramid, and they go, it's not the same.
It's the same?
It is, man.
Stop hating.
Yeah. Stop complaining. Shut up. Look, it seems to be the only place in the Step Pyramid where these kinds of stone housewares were found in quantity. Although Petrie found some fragments of similar bowls in Giza, many of them have inscribed or scratched into them the symbols of the earliest kings of Egypt. They're pre-dynastic era monarchs from before the pharaohs. Judging from the primitive skill of the inscriptions, it seems unlikely that those signatures were made by the same craftsmen who fashioned the bowls in the first place. Perhaps they were added later by those who had somehow acquired them. So, who made the objects? How, where and when? And what became of them? That their housewares have been buried in the oldest parts of the Egyptian pyramids. My goodness.
Yeah, look, I think what's happened here is they found a whole bunch of really high quality stuff, and they just kept it, really. That's what I think, right? They found it, and then they built the Saqqara pyramid themselves, that's my opinion, and they just used all the stuff they found in the other pyramids and the other sites around Egypt that were clearly far more advanced, and showed the same kind of stonework that we found everywhere else in the world. That's really the point of this particular section, the stonework that's found all around the world. If it was only one place, Dave, where you say, oh, look, one place, they did a really good job, and you go, okay, maybe there was some kind of freak that happened, and these people were just super advanced, or who knows what, right? But the point is that I could live with it. I go, okay, it's just a freak event. Let's move along, and nothing else to see here. But these coincidences keep mounting. We find the only surviving Antikythera mechanism that was ever made, by the way, according to these people. Then we find these amazing stoneworks that we can't do today. We can't actually do that today. We cannot do it. Okay, it can't be done. And if it could be done, it would take a lot of effort. So the answer then, the question becomes, why would you go through this effort? Just make something else, right? Just do something else. Just do it easier. And to make it en masse would suggest that it was just an object that was being used, right? If you only find one or two pieces, then you go, oh, okay, somebody spent their entire life making this, or this is really the height of the craftsmanship, and it was treated like a super duper object for the king and the queen or whoever, the emperor, right? So they can have their dog eat out of it, whatever it might be. But that's not the case. These are not onesies and twosies. Well, yeah. Well, they're not onesies and twosies, right? They can't
No,
be
that's
onesies
right.
and twosies.
Yeah.
Antikythera cannot be a onesie either, because of the complex and really intricate gear work. You don't go from beating on a rock to a clock. No, it doesn't happen. It's stupid to suggest it. Same with this. Where's the smoking gun, Mickey? Where's the mobile phone in the sand? Where is it? This is it. This show is it. All of these 79, 80 pages, whatever it is. This is the smoking gun. We're talking about stuff we can't do today.
No.
Petrie Flinders, arguably the father of modern Egyptology, himself said it's clear that the Egyptians had a lathe. Clear. Not only that, maybe this lathe was a mobile lathe, and maybe it was a CC lathe. Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe they didn't have computers back then. But the point is, they had something, Dave, and we can't do this. And it's being done everywhere. And we're going to get to this in a second. Now, the next thing here, this is really interesting as well, is the tube drilling component, right?
Yeah.
And tube drilling is actually quite hard to do because you have to keep a certain speed going of the drill in order not to fracture the material you're drilling into. If you drill too slowly, for argument's sake, right, you won't get anywhere. And if you drill too fast, you can damage the material you're drilling into. Not only that, how do you stop the drill bit, as it were, from overheating if you're going at a certain speed, right? So this is really, so let me just share with you what we found here, or rather what the scientists have found, and we're going to present it to you. Now, these tubular drills vary in thickness from 1/4 inch to 5 inches in diameter, and from 1/30th of an inch to 1/5 of an inch thick. 1/30th of an inch.
That's crazy.
It's great, right? The smallest.
Wait. So thinking about how they could manufacture a tool that thin with that kind of tensile strength.
Yeah, to drill through granite.
Yeah.
What was it? Oh, don't you worry, it was copper and sand.
Copper. That's right.
It
was a piece of copper wire.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was wishful thinking is what they used.
That's right.
We had lots of it. Love and wishful thinking. Because Sai Hawass, I don't know if he's still around, he was an Egyptologist not too long ago. He was in charge of all the antiquities in Egypt. He said, you know what built the pyramids? Love. Love for the pharaoh built the pyramids.
Oh, sure.
And a million slaves if you go down that road. But sorry, I shouldn't make fun of the guy.
Massive whips.
Massive whips and elephants. The smallest hole yet found in granite is 2 inches in diameter. There is a still larger example where a platform of limestone rock has been dressed down by cutting it away with tube drills about 18 inches in diameter. The circular grooves occasionally intersecting prove that it was done merely to remove the rock. So they didn't chip the rock away. They drilled. I mean, you can imagine in your head, you're drilling holes into the rock, and in some cases overlapping to essentially to get the rock out from where you want it to come from, right? So you're drilling out a rock, or you're drilling out a cavity, or whatever it might be, to remove a large rock, rather than chipping away at it, or clearly they didn't blow it up, right? The ancient builders used a tube drill to hollow out the sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. Now, if you haven't seen it, it is very rough on the outside. Inside, it is perfectly machined, and I'm using this word advisedly. It is smooth at right angles, right? All the sides are lining up. It's a marvel of engineering. And there's of course, and it's been where is it? Oh yeah, here, Ancient Builders. Oh, sorry, I moved on too far. In 1996, a tube-drilled piece of granite was on display in the Cairo Museum without any associated identifying information. And there's a photo there, and I don't know if it's part of our show, but if you can go and see it, please go see it. But the photo clearly shows spiral grooves on the visible portions. These grooves can be seen to be of regular depth and spacing, and occur in all of the holes in this piece. As the holes overlap, where these grooves, where these grooves caused by an abrasive slurry, they would not be expected to be so consistent. So if you've got a slurry in there that's abrasive, the
accuracy of the cut is reduced.
It can't be, right? Because you got a slurry there, which is by the definition not an accurate tool to use. These grooves seem to support Petry's conclusion of jeweled points set into bronze tube drills. Well, that's you can believe that. It's possible. Now, but let's get back to the sarcophagus. Okay, it's astounding just how amazingly machined this thing looks. They drilled, of course, and left a tube drill mark on the top side, or the top inside of the box on the east side. They did some extra polishing to fix it up, but if you go to the King's Chamber, you can still see it if you look really, really carefully. Looking at the radius of the cut in the sarcophagus, which is less than 2 inches, it is obvious that in this one piece alone, the masons made thousands of holes, each several inches deep. So the sarcophagus wasn't scooped out, if you will, right? It was drilled out. The craftsmen who did this had mastery of the principles of drilling round hollow holes in any material, soft or hard, wood, stone or metal, and could have drilled virtually any natural occurring material on this planet. This level of drilling or drilling expertise we don't have today, and we would do it very differently. All right, we would not do it this way. Dave?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So, the Valley Temple near the Sphinx. Most of the doorways in this temple still show evidence of tube drilling. It seems that the holes were used to hold in place long vertical rotating shafts on which the doors were hung, like hinges. A primitive version of tube drilling can be done with a bamboo drill bit, a bow saw, and sand. That's the thing you were talking about earlier, Mackie. My esteemed co-host was talking about. However, making it a bit tough enough to drill holes in granite is not simple, easy, or primitive. Drilling with a tube is a specialized method that won't develop without the need for a large hole. These holes indicate a technology not developed just for this purpose, but for many earlier and easier purposes. Generations of development over many projects, or over hundreds of years. They imply mining and metallurgy, bit manufacturing, generations of experience with grinding materials, rotational manufacturing techniques, the wheel, and all that goes with it. What was the motivation for this development, and is there a corresponding archaeological record of pre-dynastic and Old Kingdom Egypt? It's a good question, Mickey. It's like, to build the pyramids, you need infrastructure, you need food, you need housing, you need all of that to go in it. And yes, to build something that was going to tube drill, you need a mechanism like a slide that will propel the tube in exactly a straight XYZ line, right?
Oh, absolutely. So if you are out of alignment, you might as well start again.
That's exactly right. So can you imagine what else is needed, right? How big the machinery needs to be.
Yeah. And once you've done the tube drilling, you still have to come to perfectly formed 90-degree angles around the edges for the sarcophagus, especially, right? So, and another thing to understand, so we're talking about the building of the pyramids and the infrastructure. Yes, that's all. You're 100% correct. And this is going the next level down. This level of expertise of drilling specifically, or stonework in general, as was pointed out here, would take hundreds of years to develop over much time and expertise and many different things they would have built and worked on. And we have to understand here that that's where the Egyptians started. And then, over time, their efforts and achievements became inferior. So very much like the Sumerian civilization, the Egyptian civilization seems to jump into existence fully formed, but not fully formed on a primitive level, fully formed on a highly technological level, able to do things that we can only marvel at today. And we've discussed nanotech in the past few shows. We've discussed the lost art of making these metals and glasses and all other wonderful things. The cup that can detect poisons, for crying out loud. Hello, smoking gun. You want to see? In fact, this convinces me more than any mobile phone found in the sand, my friend. Now, this is really the kicker here, right? This goes well beyond anything that we know anymore, right? This is lost knowledge now. Now, there's some interesting comments here from Petrie around the mechanical methods that were employed, and the following extracts are in fact taken from Chapter 8 of mechanical methods in Petrie's classic reference work, The Pyramids and Temples of Gizeh. They concern some of his findings that he made in Gizeh, in fact, during the winters of 1880 and 1881. Which is, of course, when this whole thing, Egyptology, really got cracking. The methods employed by the Egyptians in cutting the hard stones, which they so frequently worked, and this is the quote here now, have long remained undetermined. Various suggestions have been made, some very impractical, but no actual proofs of the tools employed or the manner of using them have been obtained. The typical method of working hard stones, such as granite, diorite, basalt, etc., was by means of bronze tools. These were set with cutting points far harder than the quartz which was operated on. The material of these cutting points is yet undetermined, but only 5 substances are possible: beryl, topaz, chrysoberyl, corundum or sapphire, and diamond. The character of the work would certainly seem to point to diamond as being the cutting jewel. We got diamond drills today, that's what we're using.
Yeah.
And only the considerations of its rarity in general interfere with this conclusion. I mean, diamonds just don't lie around, right? Clearly. Many notions, and we're still quoting from the book, are in the habit of cutting hard materials by means of a soft substance, as copper, wood, horn, etc., with a hard powder applied to it. The powder sticks in the bases employed, and this being scraped over the stone to be cut. So wears it away. So if your cutting tool is soft, but the abrasive slurry is hard, that's really the principle here, right? Many persons have therefore very readily assumed, as I myself did at first, this is Petrie talking, that this method must necessarily have been used by the Egyptians, and that it would suffice to produce all the examples now collected. Such, however, is far from being the case. Though no doubt in alabaster and other soft stones this method was employed. He goes on, that the Egyptians were acquainted with cutting jewel far harder than quartz, and that they used this jewel as a sharp-pointed graver, is put beyond doubt by the diorite bowls with inscriptions of the 4th dynasty, of which are found fragments at Gizeh, as well as the scratches on polished granite of Ptolemaic age at San. The hieroglyphs are incised with a very free cutting point. They are not scraped or ground out, but are plowed through the diorite with rough edges to the line. As the lines are only 1/150th of an inch wide, 1/150th, Dave.
Yeah.
The figures being about 0.2 of an inch long. It is evidence that the cutting point must have been much harder than quartz, and tough enough not to splinter when so fine an edge was being employed. Probably only 1/200th of an inch wide. Parallel lines are graved only 1/30th of an inch apart from center to center. Parallel lines that only 1/30th of an inch. That's what? I hope people are listening to this. We therefore need to have no hesitation in allowing that the graving out of lines and hard stones by jewel points was a well-known art. Because it's there. I mean, you can't argue with a thing that exists, right? And when we find on the surface of the saw cuts in diorite grooves as deep as 1/100th of an inch, it appears far more likely that such were produced by fixed jewel points in the saw than by any fortuitous rubbing about of a loose powder. He's being facetious here. And when further, this actually passes as a joke in his circles, and when further it is seen that these deep grooves are almost always regular and uniform in depth and equidistant, their production by the successive cuts of the jewel teeth of a saw appears to be beyond question. I go on. That the blades of the saw were of bronze, we know from the green staining on the sides of the saw cuts and on grains of sand left in a saw cut. The forms of the tools were straight saws, circular saws, tubular drills, and lathes. The straight saws varied from 0.3 to 0.2 of an inch thick, 0.03 to 0.2 of an inch, according to the work. The largest were 8 feet or more in length. Number 6, a slice of diorite bearing equidistant and regular grooves of circular arcs parallel to one another. These grooves have been nearly polished out by cross-grinding, but are still visible. The only feasible explanation of this piece is that it was produced by a circular saw. These tubular drills vary in thickness from 1/4 inch to 5 inches in diameter, and from 1/30th to 1/5 of an inch thick. The smallest hole yet found in granite, as we said earlier, is 2 inches in diameter. At El Berche, there is a still larger platform of limestone rock has been dressed down by cutting it away with tube drills about 8 inches in diameter. And we've just spoken about that earlier. Then we've got this. The lathe appears to have been as familiar an instrument in the 4th dynasty as it is in the modern workshops. Well, back in 1880. Still we're using lathes still today. The diorite bowls and vases of the Old Kingdom are frequently met with and show great technical skill. One piece found in Gizeh, number 14, shows that the method employed was true turning and not any process of grinding, since the bowl has been knocked off its centering, recentered imperfectly, and the old turning not quite turned out. Thus, there are 2 surfaces belonging to different centerings and meeting in a cusp. Such an appearance could not be produced by any grinding or rubbing process which pressed on the surface. Another detail is shown by fragment number 15. Here the curves of the bowl are spherical and must have therefore been cut by a tool sweeping an arc from a fixed center while the bowl rotated. This center or hinging of the tool was in the axis of the lathe for the general surface of the bowl, right up to the edge of it. But as a lip was wanted, the centering of the tool was shifted, but with exactly the same radius of its arc, and a fresh cut was made to leave a lip to the bowl. This was certainly not a chance result of handwork, is shown not only by the exact circularity of the curves and their equality, but also by the cusp left where they met. This has not been at all rounded off, as would certainly be the case in handwork, and it is clear proof of the rigidly mechanical method of striking the curves. This is a very detailed account of the work that went on, and we left it in here not to bore you, but to just make you understand how much study had gone into it and how unlikely it is that it would have been, a copper tool with some sand that would have been sufficient to produce these works of art. Crazy stuff. Which brings us to the most important piece of the whole stoneworking thing, Dave, which is the prehistoric construction techniques.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't you... and this is important. Now, I don't know if... do we have the pictures showing for this as well?
Yeah, so I've been running them the whole time, but what I'm going to also do in this is I'm going to, every once in a while when there's pictures, I'll show them on the screen.
Beautiful, beautiful.
All right, so the earliest examples of stone masonry in both the Old and the New Worlds demonstrates a high skill level, something which is often suggested as being a result of the existing knowledge of carpentry and the transition in working from wood to stone. This idea is borne out somewhat in Egypt, where, for example, the masonry of the ceilings in the temples of the first dynasty, Saqqara, were carved to imitate the reed-bundled ceilings of pre-dynastic Egypt. There is, however, no evidence of such a transition in the Americas. The featured masonry techniques, which are folded stone corners. I'm just going to get this up again. So folded stone corners, multifaceted stones. That means stones with more than 4 sides. They've, 8, 9, 10, 14 sided stones that they've cut. Metal block ties. That's where they cut basically across the joint. They cut a large H or an I, a capital I with like a Romanesque style I, and they pour a metal into there, and that holds them together. The quarry marks, that's the splitting of stones in the quarries. The technique there is extraordinary. They were able to move exceedingly large stones. There's also extreme masonry. Vitrified stone, that's where the outside has been heat treated. Maneuvering of the protuberances. Also the mortise and tenon joints they've done, say Pumapunku is an example of that. Concrete in ancient structures. There's the drilling in prehistory and the specific selection of stone for the purpose in which it's been utilized. So the transport and use of unnecessarily large blocks of stone from the modern day's point of view, the specific selectivity of stone type along with various examples of extreme masonry at numerous sacred and ancient monuments is starting to reveal a reverence for stone itself, an idea which has have foundation in mythology, religion, and can still be seen today in Jerusalem, Mecca, and the Lignum of India, and at the crowning of any new king or queen in the UK, the Scottish Stone of Scone, and the English King's Stone, etc., and there are many, many more. It is noticeable that there are several specific construction techniques in the masonry of apparently unrelated cultures from around the ancient world. The specific similarity in design, technique, and engineering skills is, in certain cases, very suggestive of a common source of knowledge, or at least of contact between cultures. In response, it has been argued that such similarities are co-evolutionary, being the natural result of working with stone. I say no.
I say no also for a number of reasons, most of them to do with the fact that what we see here, certainly in the megalithic and titanically so megalithic structures, the question is here, why? Why would you use such large stones? If you're working with stone, all right, you choose the easiest path of attack.
Yeah.
Not the hardest, or at least what to us appears the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
And the key here is that it's, and I'm going to talk about a couple of things here. It's the similarity, the striking similarity in building techniques, the striking similarity in clamping, right? That you see from all around the world, from cultures that clearly we don't know anything about anymore, because it is clear that these building techniques were probably contemporary to each other, not separated by much in time, but we don't know who did it. We know who moved in afterwards. We know all about those people that moved in afterwards and say, yeah, these are now our buildings. And of course you would, because they were built to last. Mm-hmm. Right? This is really the kicker here. And one of the crazy things are these folded corners. And it's literally a stone that goes around the corner. So normally when you build a wall, you build bricks, and the cornerstones, they don't meet. They're not the same stone. They're two stones that form a corner normally, the way we lay a wall these days, right? But in this case, the stones, as they're set around the corner. right, at a 90-degree angle, more or less. Old temple. It's one of those cyclopic, monuments, in my opinion, that predate any known history that we know of. We found one recently. It was brought to my attention by Forgotten Origin, the Out of Australia Theory, is a website where they found the very same techniques in Ratu Boko in Indonesia. The very same stone folding around the corner technique, if you will. Yeah. Mm. And then several structures show the blocks cut with an internal angle so as to fold the stone around the corner. It is suggested, though, that this was incorporated as an earthquake preventative. And that's smart, too, because it is obvious these structures are still standing thousands of years later. Now, like I said, in the Valley Temple in Giza, there are several stones with this design feature in the Valley Temple. And it's interesting to note that the stones have been cut so as to continue only a short distance around the corner, which hints at the idea that style might have been involved rather than, or as well as rather, as function. And Luxor shows the same kind of corner in Egypt, again, stoneworking, but also Machu Picchu in Peru shows the same around the corner. And this is the same around the corner. So it's not a stone that goes all the way around, right? So one side of the stone is in the wall, right, for a fairly long time, and then a bit of it bends around the corner. Right, and you could argue, well, that could be co-evolution. Yes, if somebody then maybe had the stone go around it equilaterally, so there's stone in this wall and as much stone on the other side, right? But what we see here is one side of the stone in the wall is longer than the other side that is folded, which is shorter, and that seems to be a design feature across all of these different sides. Like I said, looking at Ratu Boko, Indonesia, looking at the Luxor Temple in Egypt, looking at Gizeh, the Valley Temple there as well in Egypt, looking at Machu Picchu in Peru. Okay, Dave, tell us about multifaceted stones.
Yeah, absolutely. It is often suggested that this design feature was incorporated into constructions as an earthquake preventative. The fact that the constructions exist in such good condition after so long, in itself, supports that idea. And you can see the images that we have in relation to this. So multifaceted stones, this is the Valley Temple again, Giza in Egypt. While the Egyptian examples above follow a horizontal plane, the South American examples, and hopefully we have those as well, which they do, below are polygonal, apparently following neither vertical nor horizontal planes, a process which would have required a considerably higher level of technical skill. And that is that every stone in the wall is a different shape entirely from any other stone, and horizontal isn't even factored into it.
Nah.
They're not rows like a brick wall. These are just any stone to fit any place, but we'll make it fit. Damn it, we're going to make it fit. But really, to be honest, the kind of stonework that's involved in doing this is so off the charts, in skill, that it does look like the stones were soft at the time, like putty. It's the only thing that comes to mind, Mickey, when I look at it.
I don't know. That's crazy. And look, even today we know that the Inca masonry of South America is most likely the finest the world has ever seen. And you've seen these stones, but there are so many similarities. There are buttresses
Inca.
in the stones.
Pre-Inca.
Obviously, right? And there's one here which has got 12 surrounding, at Cusco, in fact, it's called the Stone of the 12 Angels. There are 12 stones around this one stone, and they're all coming in at different angles to that one stone. There's Sacsayhuaman, you probably know this is one of the greatest walls. Another place where it was built very similar is
but they're massive.
Easter Islands.
Mickey, yeah. Those stones in that wall, one of the greatest walls of all time, they're huge. Oh,
enormous. They're houses. These stones are houses, really, right? If you want to make a comparison there. And you look at it, and you go, oh, I mean, why did you build a wall like this in the first place? That's what I want to know, right? It's astounding. Again, Easter Islands, like I said, there are about 300 Ahu platforms, surrounding Easter Island.
And it's the same masonry.
Same.
The little piece in the middle there, you can see.
Yeah. So again, this is not one place in the world, right? And you really need to look at this in totality. I just told you there are places. In fact, there are places in. Angkor Wat has got similar masonry. We just learned that Ratu Boko in Indonesia has similar masonry, very similar. We've learned about Machu Picchu. We've learned about Saskatchewan, and we've learned Easter Islands. We've learned about Egypt, right? All of these places, which are very far apart from each other, are showing these specific building forms, right? One off here and there, you let it go. Metal block ties, same thing. They have that in Ratu Boko, Indonesia as well. There are pictures of that. Okay, this is a construction feature that suggested again as an earthquake preventative, right? It's the means used to join huge blocks together. It is believed that copper or silver maybe was used at Tiahuanaco, both of which are soft metals. There are also examples of old world metal clamps in Egypt, in Cambodia, Angkor Wat, in Karnak, as well as Dendera, Tiahuanaco, Ollantaytambo. They all have metal clamps of a very similar shape, right? Okay. Now it's also been suggested that these metal clamps, these ties, were employed to ground structures properly. Often made of conducting quartzite. That is certainly a possibility. Dave, why don't you take us through building with large stones? That's just phenomenal, isn't it?
It sure is. The word megalith derives from the Greek mega, meaning large, and lithos, and stone. One of the most noticeably impressive factors about the megaliths is their sheer size, which has given certain sites an almost mythological status, with local traditions often claiming that they were fashioned by giants or gods. For example, a story was told by the local Aymara Indians to the Spanish traveller who visited Tiwanaku shortly after the conquest of the city's original foundation in the age of the Chamak Pacha, or first creation. Long before the coming of the Incas, its earliest inhabitants, they said, possessed supernatural powers for which they were able to miraculously to lift stones off the ground which were carried from the mountain's quarries through the air to the sound of a trumpet. Numerous tales describe megaliths and single large erratics as stones which giants had thrown or lost, while megaliths in particular are also described as their graves or houses or ovens. For example, Teme 1840 213. I won't go through the rest of it. You can see it on screen. The association of giants with megaliths goes back to at least the 13th century, when the oldest references to Tumuli giants, gigantus, Tumuli gigantus, are found in written documents. Interestingly, such stories replaced almost completely for several centuries the references to ancient mounds as graves of earlier people. The Antiquorum Sepulchra, Tumuli Paganorum, which were more frequent in the earlier sources, though today in Mecklenburg, von Pommern, megaliths are still generally known as the you take that one.
Höhenengräber. Höhen is a giant. Keep going.
Giant graves, for example, in Forst Efstorf. Using large stones is one thing, but when one comes across examples of stones being moved weighing hundreds of tons, when smaller stones would have been far more efficient or ergonomically efficient, such as the 3 foundation stones at Baalbek.
Our favorites.
It becomes clear that the size of the stone itself was a consideration in the process of the construction. The use of enormous stones such as those seen at Baalbek, Giza, Stonehenge, Karnak, and Jerusalem, for instance, etc., reveal a level of organisation and skill that has naturally reduced people to debate in the past. Meki, these stones are so fantastically large that we couldn't use them because we can't design around the cut, the excavation, and the movement and placement of these stones. Whereas today we would just simply do a large concrete pour or something very similar, right?
As did the Romans. And that's that's my argument, or part of the argument as to why I'm saying that the Jupiter temple, at least the platform, is not Roman. Romans wouldn't and couldn't move stones of that size.
Shown to have couldn't been able to do it.
Yeah, correct. It's insane. In fact, that there. I mean, let's go through some of these large-scale megaliths, and hopefully there's a picture there, just to see the scale of a person standing next to it. One of the largest carved stones ever, weighing in at over 1,000 tons. 1,000 tons was left unfinished by the constructors in the quarry. The technical abilities of the builders of the Baalbek platform are equally matched by their engineering confidence, which required them next to maneuver the stones uphill and fit them seamlessly into place. The associated difficulties of such a labor provide an insight into the builder's confidence, conviction, and ability. I mean, that's really the thing here. Not only that, but it also tells us, like we've said many, many times before, there was a tools down event at some time, right? Or something happened which left these stones unfinished. Maybe there was a flaw in them as well. I mean, but there's definitely a tools down again. Now, the use of large stones is repeated again and again all over the ancient world. I think we've shown that here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to be blind not to see it. Again, smoking gun, hello. And that is really leading us to one question. I've been asking this question all along. Why? Forget how. We know it was done. It was done. There it is. It's there. You can't argue with it. It's there. It's there. Boom, right? The question is, why? Why would you do it this way? This is the worst, and this is the hardest. This is like John F. Kennedy said, we're not going to the moon because it's easy, but because it's hard. Was that the attitude? Now, the most common suggestion is that larger stones provide structures with increased stability and durability. Yeah, of course, that's definitely true. I mean, you've got to be, again, rocks in the head, right? But the excessive size of some of these stones, when balanced against the additional time, effort, and manpower, suggests that other factors may have been involved. I agree, 100%. Can't really figure out what those were, though. The movement of the larger megaliths are evidence of a social enterprise involving the cooperative skills and labor of large numbers of well-organized people. Alexander Thom suggested that the Neolithic people had a society with hierarchy, structure, and specialized castes. This idea starts to explain the means whereby such stones may have been transported, but not why. Mendelssohn suggested that the purpose of building fantastically large structures, such as the early dynastic pyramids, for example, of Egypt, was simply to unite the people through a common purpose, at the same time as reinforcing the social hierarchy of kingship. Extending this theory, one could say that if the size of the monument reflects the greatness of the builder, then the size and type of stone in turn reflects the greatness of the masons. Now, last thought on this particular thing. The confidence of the megalithic builders worldwide to work with such unnecessarily, this is the key word here, unnecessarily large stones is surpassed only by their determination to transport specifically selected stones over vast distances to previously selected sites. So not only did they have these stones which were completely unnecessary in their size, but no, let's make it harder, Dave. Let's use these stones, not any. I don't want this stone. I want a stone from over there, but I don't want to build it over there. I want to build it here because that's where I want to build it. Tell us about the long distance megaliths.
Absolutely. There are some extraordinary accounts of unfeasibly large stones being moved over unnecessarily long distances, suggesting that that either the location or the stone itself were considered to have special properties. Stonehenge. Over 80 blue stones moved over 250 miles from Preseli in Wales. Giza, 50 plus ton granite stones transported over 300 miles from Aswan. Karnak, 300 plus ton. I can't pronounce that.
Loch Mariaquer.
And Menchios That'll do. Transported over 25 miles. Ollantay Tumbo, 50 plus ton porphyry stones, transported 7 miles over 6,000 meters up high mountains and valleys.
Yeah, so not just the
Not laterally.
No, also up and down. Thank you. That's a good idea.
So Machu Picchu also, Meki, just to say this, that they were cut on an adjacent mountain and taken to the valley floor and then up to Machu Picchu.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yep.
That is so common. I haven't walked up to Machu Picchu, but the walk itself is extraordinary.
Yep.
And narrow, and unfeasibly complicated to take anything except for a backpack, let alone a stone that weighs, 300 tons. Good luck with that. There must have been another way of doing it. But what does all this tell us? Any more than they wanted stone from one place to be taken to another? I demand it.
Make it so.
Yeah.
Make it so.
Now, you're not. There's no. There is only do. Right. In each case, there must have been a large and available workforce, including skilled and unskilled labourers, support organisers, and presumably under an authority of an individual or caste. Such structures can be deemed as social constructions and lend weight to Mendelssohn's theory of large monuments and stones as symbols of greatness, or some kind of authoritarian government that just says, we want it, you're doing it, we don't care if you die doing it, doesn't matter, we built the thing, look, but we haven't got any peasants left, doesn't matter. We move the stones with the grease of the people dying beneath them. Assuming one of the prerequisites of construction being the use of large stones, why then select to move such large stones over such long distances when other, more local and readily available stones were known, as was the case in Stonehenge, for instance? Although it is arguably obvious that the granite used in the Egyptian pyramids was structural, the same cannot be said of all sites. Noticeably, the can't read it, mica sheets
90-ton mica sheets, yep.
of
Teotihuacan.
Yeah, because I've got like funny characters in there, I can't read it. Which were found sandwiched between stone layers of stone and which served no apparent structural or aesthetic function. So, stones transported over long distance to build megaliths are described as pieces of places. The logistic difficulties involved with long-distance transportation suggest that the stone itself was considered to have qualities worth transporting it over such extreme distances. However, the very fact that the stones were transported so far also suggests that the new location itself must have been of equal importance to the builders. What, Mickey, at some point, we've got 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
At some point here, I've just got to say this, right? Not only did they have the want to use large stones, but they had the ability to move the stones to support their want and need.
Yeah.
That's not something that we would do today. We would engineer something that was much or far easier for us to deal with in it, utilizing our own capabilities and not this, dreamscape where nothing that they designed was plausible. Clearly plausible, clearly able to be done. There it is, as you say, boom.
And this is... Go on.
No, you please finish it off.
No, but this is really the thing, Dave, and you said it beautifully, right? I mean, it was done. It has been done. Here it is. We are scratching our head as to why. Why on earth would you do it this way? Why on earth would you do it in this fashion? It makes no sense from a practice. Like they used to say, Occam's razor is usually the best way to deduce a problem, right? Mm-hmm. To reduce it to its true form. Not this here. There's no Occam's razor. There's no Occam's razor. You can't apply Occam's razor unless you shift your paradigm. Because Occam's razor would suggest that they would have to do it this way. There's no other way you would do it, but they were compelled to do it. That's Occam's razor here. You have to do it this way. Any other way to do it, and by the way, any other way would be easier. Any other way to do it would be easier, but it was not sufficient. So therefore, Occam's razor here says, no, it says it was done this way because this was the only possible way it could have been done to fulfill whatever need they had, right? Or it ain't no thing. I'm just gonna do it. What are you gonna do that? I'm just gonna do that. Yeah, then I'm gonna build the moon. By the way, so that's
next on my list,
right?
Yeah.
Because if you extrapolate this, right? Why do any of this, and why do it in this fashion? That's where you end up. You end up at the moon. Why do it? Well, clearly because we can. Thank you very much. So yeah. I'm. This is your smoking gun, everybody. People, is this the music?
Yeah, that's music.
Okay. All right, don't go away. Gerber has got an awesome show coming up. Thank you for your time and your kind ears.
Yeah, that's right. We'll catch you next week for show 428. Take care in the meantime. Stay safe.
Stay safe.